Chapter 1. The Old House on Elm Street. The old house on Elm Street had been abandoned for decades, its once grand facade now a crumbling ruin. Local children dared each other to approach it, whispering tales of ghostly apparitions and eerie sounds that haunted the place. To the adults in the town of Ravenswood, it was simply an eyesore, but to the children, it was the epicenter of every nightmare. Emily Parker had just moved to Ravenswood with her parents. They had inherited her great-aunt's house, a modest but cozy home just a few blocks from the infamous Elm Street mansion. Emily, an inquisitive 12-year-old with a penchant for adventure, had heard the rumors about the old house from her new classmates. "Do you think it's really haunted?" she asked her new friend, Jacob, one afternoon after school. Jacob, a lanky boy with a shock of unruly hair, nodded solemnly. "My older brother went in there once," he said. "He swears he heard whispers, even though he was alone." That night, as Emily lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about the old house. She imagined the shadows that danced across its walls and the whispers that floated through its empty halls. The thought both terrified and thrilled her. She decided she had to see it for herself. Chapter 2. The Dare. The following weekend, Emily convinced Jacob and two other friends, Sarah and Ethan, to join her on an expedition to the old house. Armed with flashlights and a pack of sandwiches, they set out just before dusk, hoping to return before dark. As they approached the house, Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. The house loomed over them, its broken windows like empty eye sockets staring into their souls. The front door, barely hanging on its hinges, creaked ominously in the breeze. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah whispered, clutching her flashlight tightly. Emily nodded, trying to steady her trembling hands. "We'll just take a quick look around and then leave," she said, her voice barely audible. They stepped inside, the floorboards groaning under their weight. Dust motes danced in the weak beams of their flashlights. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay. Emily led the way, her heart pounding in her chest. They explored the ground floor, finding nothing but empty rooms filled with cobwebs and broken furniture. Just as they were about to head upstairs, a faint whisper echoed through the hall. "Did you hear that?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. They all froze, listening intently. The whisper came again, a soft, indistinct murmur that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Let's get out of here," Sarah said, backing towards the door. But Emily was drawn towards the stairs. "Wait," she said. "Let's just see what's up there." Chapter 3. The Whispering Shadows. They ascended the creaking staircase, each step amplifying their fear. At the top, they found a long hallway lined with doors. Emily's flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. She paused, staring at one of the doors at the far end of the hall. It was slightly ajar, and she felt an inexplicable pull towards it. As they approached, the whispering grew louder, more distinct. It was as if 1,000 voices were murmuring just beyond the door. Emily pushed it open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. In the center stood an old wooden chair, and in the chair sat a figure, shrouded in shadows. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The figure slowly raised its head, and the whispering ceased abruptly. The room was plunged into an oppressive silence. Then, the figure spoke, its voice a low, raspy whisper. "Why have you come here?" it asked. Emily took a step back, her flashlight shaking in her hand. We just wanted to see," she stammered. The figure rose from the chair, its movements slow and deliberate. "Curiosity can be dangerous," it said, stepping into the light. Its face was pale and gaunt, eyes sunken and hollow. "This house has secrets, and they do not like to be disturbed." Chapter 4. The Haunting. Panic surged through Emily and her friends. They turned to flee, but the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent, filling the room with their maddening cacophony. "Let us out!" Sarah screamed, pounding on the door. The figure laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down their spines. "You cannot leave," it said. "Not until the house is done with you." The shadows in the room seemed to come alive, swirling around them, tugging at their clothes and hair. Emily felt a cold hand brush against her cheek, and she screamed. The whispers grew louder, the words becoming clearer. "Stay with us. Forever." Desperate, Emily closed her eyes and tried to remember a prayer her grandmother had taught her. She whispered the words under her breath, her voice trembling. The shadows recoiled, and the whispers faltered. Seeing this, her friends joined in, their voices rising in a chorus of desperate prayer. The shadows writhed and twisted, their hold weakening. With a final, ear-piercing shriek, the figure dissolved into a cloud of darkness, and the door flew open. Chapter 5, The Escape. They tumbled out of the room, racing down the stairs and out of the house without looking back. The night air felt like a balm on their sweat-soaked skin. They didn't stop running until they were safely back on Emily's porch. Gasping for breath, they collapsed onto the steps, their hearts still pounding in their chests. What was that?" Jacob panted. Emily shook her head, trying to make sense of what they had experienced. "I don't know," she said. "But I don't think we should ever go back there." The others nodded in agreement, too shaken to argue. The old house on Elm Street had given them more than just a scare, it had shown them the true meaning of fear. As they sat in the safety of Emily's porch, they made a silent pact never to speak of that night again. But as Emily lay in bed later that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that the house wasn't done with them. The whispers still echoed in her mind, and she knew, deep down, that some doors, once opened, can never be truly closed. And in the quiet, dark corners of the old house on Elm Street, the shadows whispered, waiting for the next curious soul to stumble into their embrace.